I love you guys.
Dance off, bro. I have the high ground.
Expecto Patronum!
39 days, 20 people, 1 survivor.
Tribe of Nerds.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Tribe of Nerds here for our third Survivor interview. Very excited to have Eden Porter from Survivor Titans versus Rebels on the podcast. Welcome, Eden, to Tribe of Nerds.
Thank you very much for having me, gentlemen. Excited to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you. So to kick this off, when did you start watching Survivor and how did you get on the show?
Oh, well, that takes me back many moons, team. So that goes all the way back to the very beginning in 2000 when I was 16 years old, just in year 10. And I very, very specifically remembering watching that first image of Jeff Probst with Pagong and Tagi on the marooning. Everyone's running around grabbing stuff and he's just talking to camera and it just literally, I was hooked from day one. And so from that point forward, I watched every single season, watched every single episode, watched everything live as it happened. And then we had the dark ages of Australian Survivor that we will not speak of, which was an absolute train wreck. I'm not sure whether you guys have had the unfortunateness of watching it, but it is terrible. They have to cancel some challenges because the wind is too windy. And it's no good. So I was disappointed that came out and I couldn't apply for that. But then we did a celebrity version, which was even more terrible, if you can believe that. And then nothing happened in Australian Survivor. So I was like, that's fine. I'll just watch American Survivor. And then as I got older, I got to the point where I was like, you know what? I've got a cunning plan to perhaps get onto American Survivor. So I'm not sure whether you guys know what the green card lottery is. So the green card lottery is, as an Australian, you go in a lottery to get a green card and every year they pick out a random assortment of names and you just get a green card and you can go over there and work. So I thought if I started applying for that, I could get it and then I could apply for American Survivor. And I thought that would be a really great in. Like, Jeff would love that. He's like, this guy's got a green card just to play on the show. This is great. I never won the green card lottery. And then lo and behold, Australian Survivor came back in 2016. And I was onto it straight away. And I auditioned every single year since it came back. The very first year, I got all the way down to the very end of casting, got onto one-on-one with producers and they were like, we really love you. But I didn't have a sob story. And that first season of Australian Survivor, they wanted the sob story. They wanted people that, oh, look, what have you survived? And stuff like that. And I'm like, no, that's not about the show. And I didn't get on. And they said, you got really close, but you didn't get on. And it's like, cool. And then in my own head, I was like, oh, look, I'll get this next year or the year after. And then I kept applying and I never got past the first round of videos. And then I was like, no, I'm never going to give up. So I just kept going. I kept going. And then eventually I got my call back and I was like, this is my chance. I'm going to blow it out of the park. And I just felt like my time was right. And then I got all the way through casting again. And then I got told no again. So, 5 weeks out from leaving, they called me. They said, look, you've made it down to 26 out of 24. Unfortunately, you're an alternate and you didn't get on. And I was like, oh, I'm just shattered. So then I go back to my normal life. I really thought this was my time. And then lo and behold, someone drops out at the last minute and they give me a call and they're like, Eden, are you still keen? I'm like, yeah, dumb question. Of course I'm still keen. And then they say, okay, we're going to re-pitch you as like the Titan of pop culture. Because I felt they originally told me the reason I didn't get on was because I didn't fit the theme. Like I wasn't really Titany enough and I wasn't rebellious enough. So I was like, oh, okay. And so they repackaged me as like the Titan of pop culture. And then they gave me a call back. This is Friday night at about 8:00 at night. And they give me a call back and they said, you're going to Samoa. And I'd like lost my mind. And then I'm like, when do I leave? And they're like, Monday at 8 a.m. I'm like, okay. So I had 48 hours, some of the craziest 48 hours of my life to get everything together and then to get out on the island. And next thing I know, like 4 days later, I'm in Samoa. It was a wild adventure. And it was literally like 23 years in the making for me to get to this point. Sorry, that was quite a long-winded response, but
You're
that's
good.
my journey.
Yeah, don't worry,
amazing.
we love it.
Yeah. Oh, awesome journey. To go off of what you just said, you only had 48 hours. We talked to Simon earlier this week, and he said it was actually better being a last minute addition to the season because he wouldn't have to dwell on it. Did you have the same feelings, or were you just like so excited because you only had like 2 days?
No, I would have loved to have had time. I would have loved to have had those 4 or 5 weeks to like really drill down on. And look, for me, it wasn't as bad because I'd been prepping for this for 23 years. So I knew my strategies going in. I knew what I was going to do. I knew how I was going to approach stuff. So it wasn't new to me. I didn't have to quickly cram and watch the episodes and be like, what is this show I'm on for? So that was good. But I would have loved to have known 100% that I'm on, and I would have gone, okay, this is exactly, I'm going to plan out this a bit more. I'm going to get this really clear in my head. I'm going to come in with this. And I did get to that point where when you get to the island, you do get a bit of the imposter syndrome, especially when you're an alternate. And you can go, well, they didn't actually want me. They didn't actually want me. That I didn't actually get picked. And you've got to really knock that out of your head. And you do go into ISO in Samoa before you get on the island. There's this little lockdown period. And during that time, I just used that time to really clear my head and focus on the game and be like, you know what? This has been so hectic and so crazy. And my emotions are like up here and my energy is up here. And I have a thing where I'll get really excited a lot of the time and I go a million miles an hour and I'm just like bang, 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 bang. And so I actually have to calm myself down and bring myself back. And so I had to do a bit of that because that can be confronting when you're meeting new people. If you've got someone that's up here all the time, I just had to be like, no, it's all about making relationships and I've got to come in there with like a clear mind. So for me, I had to pull it back a little bit. So I would have liked to have had a bit more time actually.
So you arrive on the Titans beach. What were those early dynamics like, and how do you think you fit into that tribe?
It was wild. That first little period, just looking around, you've seen some like man mountains around you. You got Jaden, you got Nathan, and in my head, I was going out there. I didn't want to play an alpha male game because I knew I wasn't going to assimilate into that group. Now I'm quite good at identifying things and getting on with people. Like I can talk football with Nathan, no problem. I can talk travel with like Jaden. I can talk these things and find connections with people. But in my head, I didn't want to play in a season that was about like, oh yeah, the lads, yeah, let's get together and all this sort of stuff. Like I wasn't there for that. So I was very aware of that coming in. And I was like, let's get on with everyone. But in my head, I knew the sort of people that I wanted to play with. I wanted to play with people that knew the game, that understood the game. And honestly, I went out there to make the best season of Survivor that has been on Australian television. So I went out there going like, you know what's going to make a really good season? If our final end game is filled with people that know the game and that want to win and that are going to be interesting players. I'm not there to bring people along to the end that are just like, oh yeah, I'm going to surround myself with people that are okay, boring or whatever. I'm going to go out there and make this awesome end game because I knew that was going to make a good season. And so that was the thought process for a lot of my votes early on and how to structure my game moving forward. So someone like Mark, I found really interesting. Caroline knew the game really well, so I wanted to work with her as well. Kitty was just a very out there sort of personality as well, so I wanted to surround myself in these people. But I wanted to keep connections with Nathan, so I could sort of bounce between both sides. Charles, I found very interesting. We didn't get to see a lot of Charles on the show, but he was a super interesting guy outside of that as well. So there was and he knew the game, and I wanted to play with people that knew the game. And ironically, I sort of manifested my own downfall, like Stephen Fishback, when I was so obsessed with being like, no, I've got to get out these alphas and I want to play with these people that got the game. And ultimately, I get voted out by one of those exact people that I wasn't keen to play the game with. So I've manifested my own downfall. I'm in good company, I think.
Yeah, for sure. So on this Titans tribe, you end up forming the middle-aged mafia and the invisible hand. So right away, the first tribal council, you end up engineering the Frankie blindside. So talk us through what happened with that.
The Frankie Blindside was so good, and it was the perfect combination of me and Mark understanding the game and working together, because Mark had a similar understanding of the game as me. He wanted to not play the alpha male game. He wanted to play with people that knew the game as well, like me. We actually connected. We found very early on, we found a mutual friend that was that I had stayed with in Argentina. She was a diplomat. And I was like, oh, I was staying with someone in Argentina. And then he was like, oh, this wasn't this person. I was like, yeah. And then we had this person in common. And just little tiny things like that make such a huge difference when you're trying to make those connections straight up. So me and Mark, we're like, yeah, this is great. We knew the game well enough. I was talking to Mark. I'm like, you know what happens to these people at the start of the game that form major alliances? And it seemed like they're running things from day one. They'll get pinned. They'll get like, oh, these guys are the leader. They're running everything. So it was really important to us to not be seen as that person straight away. And we thought the best way to do that was to both bring people in from separate camps. So I was bringing in Caroline and Kitty, and Mark was bringing in the V's. And so it didn't look like either one of us was running the entire thing. And that was really important to me and Mark at that early stages of the game, until we could at least establish and solidify power. And we both said, you know what's going to make this game really interesting is if we take the legs out from under this alpha male sort of alliance, which Frankie was a part of. Frankie was realistically running that side of the vote. She was running Nathan. Nathan and Jaden were getting on. Jaden and Winner had a pre-show friendship as well. So we knew those guys. Between the four of them, they were really tight. And then I was personally worried that, like, if Viola got pulled in there, then Valeria maybe does what Viola does, and then suddenly the majority is over on that side. So at that point, Mark didn't want that to happen either. We wanted to control the game, and so that's when we sort of said, you know what, let's put it on Frankie. This is going to be wild, and no one's going to see it coming, and no one's going to see it coming from me and Mark as well. And honestly, there was one of the votes where just everything happened perfectly, and it's the difference between playing with people that know the game and other people that are just like, oh, well, we'll just get rid of like someone that's weak. And we'll just get rid of like a Jess or someone like that. And we'll just move on with the game. Or we'll just get rid of Caroline because she's old. We're like, no, we don't want to do that. And one of the things I did want an older lady in my core alliance at that start point, because I feel like they, historically in the game, if those type of players can get to like merge, they're pretty comfortable moving forward in that point, because they stop being a target, but they're a very heavy target at the start. So I knew that Caroline would be looking for someone to work with straight up. And we made that connection, and we made quite a strong bond at the start of the game as well. So everything was falling into place straight off, and it just worked perfectly. And it was a big wake up call for half the tribe. They were like, oh wow, people are playing this game straight up. And then we were ready to go. So it was really fun.
Yeah, it was a really fun first episode, first tribal council to watch. I mean, it's probably up there as one of the best first vote offs in Australian Survivor.
I completely agree. I think there was so much happening. There was so much fun. The characters just popped straight away. Everyone had their own understanding of the game and how they wanted to push things. And yeah, being out there, it was hectic. But watching it back, you're like, yeah, all these storylines are really coming together for the first episode. I thought it was one of the strongest episodes as well.
You mentioned that things were starting to fall into place for you, but in the early tribals of Titans, your name was thrown out. So as a super fan, what is it like hearing your name out there for the first time?
It was just Jess throwing my name out. That didn't really matter. No. It was no. It was and it is being a super fan. I tell you what, before I started, they asked me what was I most scared of coming out of the game, and I said being voted off first. Like, that to me would be the culmination of 23 years of watching the show, and I would be on the island for 2 days and I would never get to play the show again. And that would be my journey on Survivor. And I was terrified that could happen, to the point of like, almost like you're thinking about it, you go, I just don't want to be the first person. Just want to be the first. So then to get my name put out there for the second vote, I was like, okay, I've got to put all my faith in these relationships that I've built like 3 days earlier. At that point, I did feel like Mark and me were solid. Caroline and me was solid. Kitty and me were solid. I felt like the Mark had the V's. So I did feel like we had a strong numbers group. So, but it's just, it hits you when you hear someone go, oh yeah, Jess threw out your name. And it's just like, And it does. You have a visceral, physical reaction to it. It's wild, and it's actually good to get that out of the way, though. You get that out of the way, and then you know what that feels like, and then moving forward in the game, like you can see, like someone like Caroline, her name was thrown out so many times. She almost got like it just didn't affect her anymore. She was just, okay, everyone's going to say my name. I'm just going to play my game and just do my things. Whereas if you get a bit later on the game, and suddenly your name's thrown out there, you go, people got like offended. They're like, how dare you put my name out there? And things like that. It's like, no, this is just the game. Your name is going to come up at some point. It's how you navigate that once it happens. And I felt like, although it did look that it did come across that I was very paranoid that second episode, but a lot of that I did have faith in my group, and I felt fairly confident going into that tribal council that the chips were gonna fall where they lay. But yeah, it is my heart skipped a beat for sure when I first initially heard that.
So we get to the point where you decide to target Viola, and were you concerned about the fallout from that with Mark, obviously having that close relationship with him, and how did you feel it was going to benefit your game, risk versus reward against pissing off Mark?
Yeah, look, the Viola vote was really interesting, and a lot of that came back to like how, again, I had like 9 pillars that I wanted to stick to win Survivor, and one of them was like get people before they get you. One of them was planting seeds in people's minds, and so for me, planting seeds and getting other people to sort of push my agenda was a big part of that sort of middle game for me. And I knew if I could do that, and I could pretty much get away with someone like Viola getting voted off and the blowback not sitting with me, it sitting more with the girls, with Caroline and Kitty, because I knew there was distrust there already. And once you know things like distrust are sitting there in the background, all you need to do is water that seed a little bit, and that will grow into a beautiful deception flower. And at that point, all the backlash was on Caroline and Kitty, and Mark was out for blood. And me and Mark had a gentleman's agreement that we would not target each other, but we never said anything about not targeting our sort of alliance members and things like that. It was a big risk. I could have, like, looking at that situation in the game, I could have definitely gone to Mark and said, you know what, you and me, let's do this. I'll come in with the V's. It'll be all 4 of us. We can drop Caroline. I know that she doesn't get on, but I did feel that at that point, Mark had a better relationship with the V's, and I would be that 4th wheel, if you were. The girls aren't picking me over Mark. Mark's not picking me over the girls. I would have ended up being on the wrong side of that. So that's why I needed to hold my group, my side together. And I did feel that me and Mark could come back together to work together at some point. And my dream for the game was for me and Mark to both get to the end, but go through sort of different routes. So have our own groups, have our own alliances, have these things where we come off and then we sort of work together and come back together. And then I had this great image of us in Final Tribal Council. I wanted to have the best Final Tribal Council of all time. I wanted 2 Titans going head to head, 2 of the biggest game players there, talking the talk and really going at it. I thought that would have been awesome. And I thought the only way for me to get there would be for me and Mark to go our own ways. If we work too closely together, we would be seen as a duo and we would get cut. But if we could get there through other means, there was a possibility to come to that end game that we could loop back in and get to the end together. And I thought that would have been wild.
For sure.
Next time.
Next time.
Well, speaking of risks, a little bit later in the game, what was your thought process of weighing the risk versus the reward of skipping the feast and trying to find that public idol with Mark and Rihanna?
Oh, guys. Okay. So you know what killed me about that is in my head, I'm like, we can go have like a little meal now, or we can find an idol. I'm like, well, the merge is coming up soon and we're going to get a massive merge feast. So these idiots don't know about the merge feast. So they're doing this now, and then in like 3 or 4 days, we're going to get a merge feast, and that's going to be my food. So I'm like, great, I'm going to go for this idol. And that was literally my thinking, not knowing, like I had no idea, no one had any idea that what I was skipping was the merge feast. Like that was the merge feast. So that frustrated me because the Titans didn't win a lot of rewards. And so I couldn't eat. But to me, finding that idol was really important, because if if I let Ree just find it, or if I let Mark just find it, there was a possibility that where we were, because we didn't know when we were merging, in that stage of the game, if one of them had an idol, and look, at that point, Alex had just left to the other side. So it was just me, Kitty, Caro, Jaden, Mark, and Riri. So then suddenly there's an idol there. And then it only takes like a Jaden or someone to be like, oh, yeah, look, I'm going over here. They could play an idol correctly. It's not just a simple, okay, guys, let's just all put our votes on Ree or split it between Mark and Ree. It was just very dangerous, and it was dangerous not knowing who had the idol as well. So I was really worried that Mark would get another one and then sit on it. And then I thought it was very possible that if Mark found it, we go to tribal council and Mark then says, yep, we'll just load up on Ree. That's all fine. And we do it. He plays all fair, and then he plays the idol on Ree, and someone else goes home. So there are a million things. You'll get this. I tend to overthink things a lot in terms of strategies and gameplay. Like I'm like, yeah, I know it's crazy, Matty. And so I'm thinking a lot through this. Ultimately, I would have loved to get an idol. I just really wanted an idol in my game. It was one of my bucket list items, and I thought this is probably a really good opportunity to get my hands on an idol. And then if I just had to burn it, like the next tribal council or the first one at merge, that my dream was just to use it that first one at merge, because that is always such a tricky vote. So I was just like, and then I'll get through one vote at merge, I'll see where the cards lie, and then I'll be able to reassess my game. That was my thought process, because again, I didn't want to hold on to an idol for too long to become that bigger target. So I would have loved to have got that idol, and I was really close to getting it as well. But yeah, just missed out. So I missed out on that, and I missed out on the merge feast, which I was shattered about.
Again, maybe next time.
Yeah, maybe next time.
Yeah.
You keep mentioning the merge. Well, the merge happens, and it's the biggest merge in Survivor history. So what were the dynamics of trying to navigate that?
The merge. Now, it was interesting because we did feel like I went into this game knowing a lot of the markers through like timestamps in other seasons and stuff like that. And I did feel that this particular season, they started doing a lot of things to throw that off, because I got the feeling that, say, in Heroes versus Villains, the season prior, there was a lot of people that knew the game, and there was a lot of people that were like, oh, yeah, we're merging now. Oh, yeah, then this is happening. Oh, yeah, this is happening. And I feel like our season, they deliberately wanted to shift that, and they didn't want these big fans to know exactly what's happening. And so it sort of wrong-footed us a few times. So to go into a merge with that many people, it was wild. And the amount of conversations you need to have in such a short amount of time, it was crazy. And one thing was really struck out. You go there and you're like, okay, I'm talking to this person, I'm talking to this person, and you just run out of time to talk to everyone. But then that comes off as like a social faux pas. It's like, you haven't talked to me. And I remember very clearly, Ferris was upset that I didn't come and talk to him. And he goes, now, Eden, you haven't come and had a discussion with me yet. And that sort of rubbed me the wrong way, because I'm like, it's a two-way street. Like, Ferris, if you were worried about that sort of stuff, but like, come over and be like, Eden, man, hey, we haven't chatted yet. Let's have a chat. I just was talking to other people, and he sort of put it out there like, hey, man, you haven't done this yet. And I was like, okay, that's your attitude. This is interesting. I did make an effort. We did sit down and have a big chat and go through things, because I'm not going to burn any bridges. But it was just an interesting thing that happened like straight off the bat at the merge in one of our first sort of interactions. Other than that, I knew that I had some pretty good relationships across the board. But what really killed me, there were two things that really hurt me coming into merge. One was that Alex didn't go home. He actually swapped tribes, and he was feeling a bit burnt by that, because me and Alex had an okay relationship sort of before that, and we were getting on. And then after that, it was never sort of the same, because Kitty, I love Kitty, but you can't lie to save her life. And Alex had said to her, hey, man, you know, that vote was I going home there. And Kitty was like, oh, yeah, 100%. We were all voting against you. And you were definitely going home. And I was like, and then Alex came up to me and was like, mate, you didn't tell me I was going home. Like, I thought we were working together. And then I was still tossing up whether I was going to go Alex or Ree at that point. But once Alex had that in his head, he just didn't trust me after that. So that hurt me. The other thing that really hurt me was Charles going instead of Winner or who was over there? It was Valeria. I had a great relationship with Charles. We had a secret alliance team Big Daddy alliance, and we were ready to go. Come merge, we were going to come back together, and me and him were pretty tight. So I didn't have a good relationship as the other two. So going into merge without that, I was like, those two things were not great for me. So I had to make sure that I re-solidified with the girls. I tried to talk to Ray a little bit, but Ray was so under Ferris's wing by that point. It was like, I remember a really good conversation me and Ray had. Ray was like, oh yeah. I was like, are you just with Ferris? Is there any room to move there? And he goes, no, like eventually there'll be some room. And I was like, oh, okay, interesting. But you could see the way we were talking to each other. They were like, they were not going anywhere. But I did remember Ray did say at one point, he said, oh, the thing about Ferris is he gets really jealous and he gets really paranoid and he'll always walk up to conversations. And as me and Ray are talking about that, Ferris's head like pops up in between. He's like, hey guys, what's going on? And so I thought that was very interesting. But then Kitty was going to go home at that vote. Like Kitty was definitely going to go home. If Scotty hadn't quit, Kitty was gone. And that was a big wake-up call as well, that things were moving and Mark had sort of infiltrated enough of the other side with the rebels to be able to get something going. And that first vote at merge, it's just like anyone but me. And so as soon as that name of Kitty thrown out there, a lot of those guys jumped on it. And Mark had said, just don't mention it to Eden. Just let's let this happen. And so after that point, it was like, okay, we need to move a bit more. We need to rebuild some relationships, and we need to move forward. And that's when the girls did a really good job at like getting Ferris and Ray and Eileen on board. I was sort of working on Eileen, building a relationship with her, trying to get Riri on board, and we madly tried to build these relationships. And it was a really fluid group, and it's cool because we had so many small groups. It was voting blocks. Like we had a lot of voting blocks, and it would have been really interesting to see. Had Scotty not gone home and Kitty had gone home, what would have happened to those blocks? Because I think it would have drastically changed the game. Scotty stays in at that point. Like Kirby and Scotty are like a very formidable threesome at that point. And then does Ferris feel as comfortable working with Kirby? That I don't think they do. I think maybe the Cold War lasts a little bit longer, and then we've got an opportunity for things to change up. Then I'm more of a free agent. I probably go into working with Mark a bit more and Eileen and a couple of things. So just little things like that. It's like, yeah, it's sliding doors. It's pretty crazy, but it was a very interesting merge.
Sliding doors, just like the Gwyneth Paltrow movie.
Great Gwyneth Paltrow film.
Yeah,
I can't believe we've made it this far in without mentioning movies.
Yes, it's true. Yeah,
well,
it's very
he
true.
did say the Big Daddy with Charles, so
I love naming an alliance. I love naming alliance out there. It was good.
You slightly covered it there, but my next question is about Scott leaving really changes the dynamics of the tribe. It's an unexpected episode of the show, and Scott leaving, how did you feel that affected your position in the game? And did you kind of feel you were in a better position going forward from there?
Yeah, so interesting thing about Scott going, like, excuse me. Interesting thing about Scott going was initially when we got to merge, again, I'm overthinking this at this point. Scotty is saying, I don't want to be here. I don't want to be part of this. I know Riri's got an idol from our idol hunt. And so initially I was like, okay, Scotty, that's really bad. Like, I really like you. You're really cool. Let's like stay in the game. And he was like, no, I think I'm going to quit. But like, let's go to tribal council. And then Kirby was like, yeah, we'll go to tribal council. And I really want to like flush Alex's idol. So I want to go to tribal. This is Kirby was like, I really want to go to tribal council. And so let's do the vote. We'll put votes on Scotty, but then we'll also try and scare Alex into using his idol. And I was like, well, you know what could happen is everyone could vote for Scotty, and then Riri uses her idol on Scotty, and then one of us goes home. And I told Mark that, and I told Caroline that, and I told Kitty that. I'm like, that's a very possibility. So what we have to do is we have to split the vote at that point. So we've got a majority on someone else. So we can't let them dictate who goes home if they do use an idol. And this is all a big ruse. And ironically, that's exactly what happens like in the latter half of this. And it's so wild when I saw that happening. And I was like, this is exactly what I was talking about, guys, that could possibly happen. You needed me on the island when Ray had his bloody idols. And so it got very apparent when we got to tribal council, though, it became apparent that this was not a ploy and that Scotty, you just know when someone is talking from the heart. But I'm actually really glad that we didn't have to go to a vote, and that we did, like Scotty did say, yep, look, I'm leaving now, and that's great. And that, I think that was handled really well in terms of helping Scotty with his situation. I think it was probably one of the better constructed quits to help someone deal with what they were going through at the time. But I was very hyper aware that this could be this could be something else at that point in the game. And as soon as Kirby was saying, oh no, let's still go to tribal council to flush an idol, I was like, something doesn't sit right about that. I don't know about that. But I actually got on quite well with Scotty, and I think we could have actually worked together moving forward. And I think making sure Kirby, like taking one of the generals away from Kirby and making her less powerful, actually, I think really helped her at that point in the game. I think if she had a lot of people behind her, and her threat level would have been higher, and I think other groupers would have looked at that and been like, okay, we've got to get rid of her. But as instead, that focus went on to the Titans, because we were tight. Me, Caroline, and Kitty were a tight threesome. So then the focus came on us. Mark only had one of his V's left, so it was just a 2. Ferris and Ray was just a 2. Eileen was sort of floating. Alex was sort of floating. So we were the big target. So I think that detrimentally impacted us. But at the same time, if Kitty had gone home, then I think I could have slid under the radar for longer. So yeah, it's a really interesting point in the show to have someone step away, and how much that affected everything else moving forward. It was crazy.
Right. The game definitely shifts a lot. And speaking of shifting, so the next vote, this is when Winna gets voted out. So walk us through what happened with the Winna blindside.
So the Winna blindside, so full credit to Caroline and Kitty. So Caroline and Kitty, and if you remember, Kitty blew up at the last tribal council. She was like, I run a 6-figure business. I'm right. And you could tell she got a sense that she was going home. So she just wanted to throw everything out there, right? Same with Caroline. Caroline realized that she was on the wrong side of everything. And as soon as we got back from that tribal council, those two went to work. And they ran around and they talked to everyone. It's not the best look. Like, it looked desperate, and it looked like they were trying to save themselves, and they were. I was playing it a bit more like, no, I'm just going to see what they do. But good on them, because they got in with Ferris and Ray, and they said, I'm with you guys. I'll work with you guys, Ferris and Ray. Let's do something like to save themselves. So they built that relationship, which was great. But what happens then is they're talking through the vote, and they're tossing Ferris. We were very aware that Ferris wanted revenge for the Garrick vote. So he wanted to take out a Winna or a Valeria, right? So I was actually trying to get Valeria out at that point, because she just won the 60K. She's got good balance. And I wanted to isolate Mark a bit more. I wanted Mark to not have as many options, and then either having to be the middleman and work with us, or make connections somewhere else, because I knew he wouldn't be targeting me either. So for me, I was like, that'd be a good target. It was actually Ferris and Ray that was like, no, let's go Winna. And we basically got outvoted at that point. And it became clear to me that in this new little alliance, we didn't have a lot of agency. I didn't have a lot of agency. I was just having to go, yep, cool, okay, it's Winna. Yep, that's cool. Even though I'll express who I want, if it doesn't come across, or if we can't move the vote in a direction we want, then it's not going to happen. So that was one of my cues for the next vote, to be like, we need to change things up, because otherwise it's just going to be the same thing again. They're going to dictate who goes home, and they're going to decide when we go home. So we've given all our agency over to this other group. And Winna goes home, which is fine. he was close with Mark as well, and Mark and him were building something. He was close with Jaden, and so there was definitely a threat of him. And look, me and Winner got on okay, but ultimately I was never going to get on as well as like Mark, who they were speaking Thai together, whereas Jaden, who had this relationship. So I was like, well, that's okay. I didn't calculate how much of an impact that was going to have on Jaden, and also who Jaden was going to blame for that. So I thought it was pretty obvious that Ferris and those guys were going after Winner as a form of revenge, but that didn't get back to Jaden clear enough in terms of that. So that was probably a miscalculation on that regard. But in that point, I couldn't do anything else. I could have. The other option was like Caroline. So it was either get rid of Winner or jump ship to a minority position and get rid of Caroline and lose a vote that was in my back pocket at that point in the game. So I was like, well, I'm not going to just burn my free Caroline vote to then go across to a side that I had no agency with, and I have no agency with this side either. So I was in a really difficult position. So I thought in my head, if we can get rid of Winner now, then I can restructure these rest of these Titans and we can sort of come back to the table and then take out some of these rebels that were still there. So it was a very interesting group dynamic in terms of the vote. And in that one as well, Ferris didn't want to tell Alex because Alex had blown up a couple of votes in the past or things like that. And I was getting on, even though me and Alex's trust was broken, I was like, okay. And I actually was under the impression that someone would tell Alex at some point. And no one, they left him out. They totally left him out. And that was another reason why I come to the next vote that Alex was again pissed at me because he's like, you didn't tell me this was happening. I was like, dude, there was 7 people that didn't tell you what was happening. Like, why are you pinning this on me? So it's funny when you do make connections with people. And that was one thing in the game that I started to get worried about, that I'd made connections with people, genuine connections, but then I had to like lie to them and get someone else out because I couldn't afford them blowing my game up because you can't fully trust someone. And because I had a connection with them, they were feeling more burnt by me. So like, even though a lot of people did it, Alex felt more burnt by me. Although a lot of people did it, Jaden felt more burnt by me. And it was actually then starting to have this negative effect getting on with people. Whereas if you're not really tight with anyone, they don't sort of finger you and say like, hey man, this is on you. So that was a difficult situation that I found myself in as well. And that was maybe one of the reasons why I didn't bond super well with Ferris, because I knew I wanted to cut him. And again, I didn't want some of these other guys to be like, hey, you're such good friends with us and then you're burning us. So yeah, there was a few things running through my head at that point. But yeah, it was a good question.
Well, but now we're on to the next tribal, which you may not like, but it's the one where you go home. So what did you think was going to happen in that tribal? Because the edit made it seem like Ferris had everybody switch the votes to you. So
yeah.
What did you think the original plan was going to be? And like, walk us through that entire tribal.
Yeah. So we got back, and the original idea was to keep that voting block that had just voted together strong. And we were going to vote off Valeria at that point. It was like, okay, we're going to do some votes on Valeria, and then we can do a couple of votes on, I think we talked about, I think someone was going to put votes on Riri, I think. Yeah. And so mainly go on Valeria, and then Valeria goes home. We were going to split the votes that way, and then it didn't matter at that point what Kirby and Riri were doing. So we were like, okay, between us, all of us, we're just going to split our votes between those guys. And then it didn't matter what Mark, Valeria, Riri, and Kirby were doing at that point, because they didn't have a majority and they couldn't impact us in any way. So then I was like, well, if that's how we're splitting everything up, I was like, you know what I could do now to get some more agency back in the game? I could take this metaphorical bull by the horns, and if I can just get a few people voting with me to take out someone like Ray, then we don't need a super majority. We just need enough people to cover the split vote. So I was like, it's actually not that many people. And if we keep this pretty close to the chest, and I was like, well, I know Mark's going to be in, and I know Valeria, it's going to save her bacon, so she's going to be in, and then I've got the girls in as well. And suddenly we're nearly at a majority. I also had Jaden, who was on board. He was like, yep, cool, whatever, as long as it's not me. So I was like, I think I've got the numbers. Not realizing that, like, realistically, it was going to a draw. Like, I should have pushed harder on an Alex or on a Riri or on a Kirby to try and solidify, like, hey, Kirby, you've been trying to get rid of Ray for this whole time. Like, now's your chance. But I didn't think I needed a super majority. I think I just needed to cover the split vote. So I was like, okay, we can do this. This is great. Then the girl, it was a little bit harder to get Caroline on board. Caroline was happy sticking with Ferris and sticking with that majority. She didn't want to do anything. And I was like, no, we can do this now. We have the numbers to do this. Like, this is a great opportunity to get back agency, because Ferris is currently dictating his game to you. Like, you're being brought along at this point. You need to take over. And it took a lot of convincing of the girls. And I actually think that was one of the red flags, because at this point in the game, you've done your immunity challenge. You only have so many conversations before tribal council. And if you're if everyone thinks that you've decided on what's happening, and yet the girls, you're constantly having to go back to girls and be like, guys, yes, we're doing this. Guys, are you okay? And those extra conversations that people see become really obvious. And it's just like, well, hang on, why are they still talking? Why are they still going over stuff? And so I think if the girls had just gone, yep, cool, we're in, let's do it, bang, and not spoken again, it would have played really well. The other thing that happened in the background was Valeria told Kirby of like, oh, I think we're going to switch the votes tonight, and it's going to be like Ray or Eileen going home. And then my understanding is then that Kirby then got back to Ferris, like just before tribal council. So a combination of, hey, this might be happening. The girls are having a lot of conversations. There's a bit of a red flag there. Now, in my head, and this is me being a logical like player of the game, was like, okay, if this all blows up, I've still got enough votes right now to get to a draw, right? Or a tie. And if we were going to then like revote, or if it was going to be a tie, they definitely wouldn't put votes on me, because I have enough connections with everyone else that they're probably not going to flip. What you do in that situation, you 100% put your votes on Caroline. If you put your votes on Caroline, then Mark flips, V flips at that point, Jaden flips, everyone flips their vote, and Caroline goes home, because they're like, great, we wanted Caroline out anyway. This is fine. So I actually thought that no one would risk going to rocks in that situation by putting votes on me, because that's not a smart, it's not a smart thing to do at that point in that point of the game. Unless you want to go to rocks and have something crazy happen, then you should have put votes on Caroline, and Caroline would have gone home because everyone would have flipped. But it didn't work out like that, and votes came to me, and I was like, okay. And then in my head, I was like, well, we're going to rocks, and this is going to be epic, because we've got the relationships here, and we did, like, Caroline, Kitty, Mark, V were all fully prepared to go to rocks, which was fantastic. And it was only that Jaden was just like, oh, look, cool, I can change my vote and affect the game. And that's exactly what he did. And it is frustrating in that regard, because I wouldn't care so much if it was a plan all along and it was like, yeah, and we flipped everything. It was just like Jaden was voting with us. Like, he voted with us that first round. Like, he was happy to vote out Ray and to move forward with that. And then to flip, it's like, oh man, this is not how it's meant to turn out. And this is logically, this is the wrong thing. This is the wrong play from like the Ferris and Ray side and everyone like that, because they were at risk of having to basically draw rocks. And the other thing that was frustrating is Jaden was immune, because he had immunity that time, so he wouldn't have had to have pulled a rock. Whereas I understand someone flipping if they're in trouble. So if they're going to have to pull a rock, you're like, well, I don't want to do that, so I'm going to flip my vote. But it didn't work out like that, and it did end up going down pretty crazily. The other thing was that all the rebels got on the same page. And look, full credit to Ferris. Ferris said to them, And I was saying this all along. There was only probably 4 people in the game that could really corral votes at that point. There was me, there was Ferris, there was Mark, and there was Kirby. We were the only 4 people that at that point was going like, guys, this is what we should do. Let's all get together. This is the vote. This is what we should do. And Ferris just got in there first with, guys, let's just vote Eden. Just everyone vote Eden. And they listened to him, because in that point, people are nervous. People want to just hear where to vote, and they did. I was honestly surprised that all of that side ended up sticking together. But between us, there was a few people that didn't really understand the concept of rocks and the double tie and what that meant. And so I think that had a bit to play with it as well. I think if people clearly understood the ramifications of those votes, then people would be like, oh, what? I could possibly go home. Well, no, I don't want that. But everyone just sort of got caught up in it. And the voting between round 1 and round 2 was super quick. Like, we voted, it was like, okay, now it's a draw between Eden and Ray. Please, let's vote again. Whereas I thought there'd be a little bit of, okay, plead your case. Guys, do this. And I sort of missed out on that. And I think in hindsight, I would have been great to be like, JLP, just hold up a second. Let's just talk this through, guys. And then I would have loved to. But at the moment, you're just like, oh, what's happening? Yeah. The real thing that I thought could go wrong that vote was actually that Ferris placed his idol correctly on Ray. That was what I was most freaked out about. I was like, that's the thing that's going to blow this up, is if everything, they get wind of it and that he plays it on Ray and Ray's safe and then I go home. That was the thing that I was worried about. And so when he didn't play it, I was like, this is great. And insane that he didn't play it at that point as well, which is wild. And that was one of the reasons why I chose Ray, because I was like, I don't think Ferris is going to play the idol for anyone else besides himself at that point in the game. I thought if anyone, he was going to play it to save his own bacon, because he'd be too worried about going home and us switching the vote on him. But yeah, that's sort of the tale, the way that I saw my final vote sort of going down in a glorious flames.
Well, maybe next time it will work.
Maybe next time. Maybe next time we'll actually go to rocks.
Yeah.
That would have been great.
So your one other thing you had in your Survivor career was in your voting confessionals, various movie quotes. Was this a something you had planned coming in, and what are some of your favorites?
No, it actually, people say, oh, you planned all this stuff. It actually wasn't. It's funny what sort of comes into your head when you're out there. And for me, you guys are probably going to relate to this, but me and my friends talk in movie quotes and TV quotes all the time. Like, they will just drop into our normal vernacular. So for me, quoting things is not like some, like, oh, I've got, this will look really cool. But ultimately, once I did a few, I was like, oh, this is fun. I'm going to keep doing these while I'm out here. So a lot of them didn't make the cut, unfortunately, but let's see if I can remember them. So there was Frankie was the Terminator. Frankie was like, you built like a Terminator, but it's us to Lisa Bailey. Do you guys know the TV show New Girl?
Yeah.
Heard of it.
Jess. Yeah.
So I was like, who am I voting for? It's Jess. That didn't make the cut. Nathan, I had a really good Top Gun reference. I was talking about how this is Operation Maverick, but at the end of this movie, Goose, who is me with my mustache, is not going to die. It's going to be Maverick that falls from grace. Then it was I had a Hulk smash one for Jaden. I did a V for Vendetta one for V. That ended in this is a really subtle quote, because me and my friends say this all the time. You know, Predator, or familiar with Predator. Me and my friends say this whenever we're in a tough situation and things are going haywire. We just say to ourselves, "Gonna have me some fun. Gonna have me some fun. Gonna have me some fun." And so I would say that a lot of the time when I was out there, which was I just love that so much. Sierra was Star Wars. I was like, she had her Princess Leia.
Yep.
The Survivor Force was not strong with her. Riri, when I was voting her over to the other side, I did a full Mission Impossible. Riri, this is your mission if you choose to accept it, to go to the other tribe, and I did all that. Winner, I did a little Social Network reference, and then Ray, I did Goodfellas. It was like, your whole life you've been waiting to be a survivor. Well, from one famous Ray to another, like it's time to go. Yeah, it was good. Yeah. So that was I had so many good Jurassic Park ones I was saving in my back pocket. There was my Clever Girls, there was Spared No Expense. There was it was I just never got to them, unfortunately. Yeah.
Maybe next time.
Maybe next time. I've got a whole bunch of in my back pocket. It was funny when I was out there, I started thinking this is so dumb. I was like, okay, so Channel 10 is owned by Paramount. So maybe I need to make Paramount movie references, which is where like Mission Impossible came from and all this sort of stuff. I was like, I think they own Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I got to try and get a Turtles quote in there. Oh, crazy. Good times though. Fun times. Yeah.
One of my favorite questions to ask survivors is when you close your eyes and you think back to your time on Survivor, what do you see?
Oh, you know what I see? I see a silhouette of JLP against the sunset on a Samoan beach with us in our shelter. It's pouring rain, and it's just like I just remember so many times just being in the shelter, just looking out, being like, I am on Survivor. Like, and every time we met JLP, it was like I'm meeting JLP and I'm on Survivor, and I never got off that high, that natural high, and it was just so incredible to be out there. And there's the two moments that really stick out to me. One was when me and Charles won the tug of war battle. That to me was just a physical challenge that I was never going to be really great at. But to get that win and to do it with Charles was just awesome. It was so invigorating. And then the other one was the viola vote and how that played out, and just feeling like, okay, I'm really playing Survivor now. This is the point where things are really starting to happen and we're making things happen. And that really stuck with me, that feeling of like, yeah, this is really good. And then the last one was just me getting my torch snuffed, and with JLP there, that's just really clear in my head. And JLP was actually like, yeah. We had a moment when he was snuffing my torch, and I could tell that he was like, oh man, you really loved being out here. And I think, yeah, we had a connection, because every challenge, you don't see this because they edit them up so much. Every challenge that went for a long time, I would be like, so JLP, do you think this is about the time where people have to dig deep? And he goes, oh, you got to dig deep, Eden. You know you do, mate. And I'm like, thank you. And I just drop little Survivor references to him, and he'd love it. It was really fun. Yeah, that was really fun.
Awesome. So as Jeff Probst says, some of the best players don't win. Who do you think is the best player to never win Survivor across any version?
Ooh. Any version. So, okay, that's very good. Look, a couple instantly come to mind. There's some of my favorites are obviously I tend to lean back into some old school. I think Lex played two fantastic games when he was out there, and I think he was a fantastic social, physical player. I love two of my favorite players of all time, Rob C and Penna, and I both feel like they both had opportunities where they just missed out. I feel like if Penna takes that deal in the Philippines, just before Abin goes out, I feel like he wins that. And I feel like Rob C, obviously, if he just gets through that last challenge, he wins that. So I think that's huge. I think Suri obviously is an amazing player, never to win. And from Australian Survivor, I think Nick really stands out as someone that, like me, kindred spirit, I feel, with Nick, of someone that's super passionate about the game and one of our original super fans on the show. And I think he just if things just fell slightly differently, I think he definitely could have pulled out a win if he got a little bit deeper. But they're probably the ones that sort of stand out for me in terms of people that are so good. Oh, Malcolm's another one. I love my boy Malcolm as well.
Same.
Oh, yeah, Jake loves that one.
Jake's favorite player of all time. Yeah.
Oh, I love Malcolm. I love my boy Malcolm. Done in game changers. That outrageous.
It's brutal. He needs to come back just because that's a bad way to send off.
That was just such a good way to go out. I know.
Hopefully for 50.
Yeah, I think he's on. I think he could be on the cards for that. I think there's been enough time as well now. Shane, I don't think Shane's probably the best never win, but again, he's just someone that I love.
I love Shane Powers.
He should have come back.
Oh,
certainly
dude,
fun.
you should come back so many times. Get him on Australian Survivor. He'd be amazing. It'd be so good.
If they do that crossover season, maybe one day.
Oh, dude, yeah, how good would that be? Oh man, yeah, get Johnny Fairplay. I know he loves us. Kelly Wentworth, get her out.
Yeah.
Suri,
Lex, yeah, Lex loves
get
you.
Lex out. Lex loves us as well. Like, there's some really big names, and I think if you're doing people from America, you get those names that have some cachet and that have some reference in the Survivor world, and I think they're the sort of the perfect. I think Malcolm would get Malcolm out here. Oh
Yes,
God,
please.
yeah, I've been fan casting this season for a while now.
So my last question for you here, Eden, is a general Survivor Australia question. If you were to pick your Mount Rushmore of Survivor Australia, but with the caveat of one player being social, one player being strategic, one player being physical, and the fourth that encompasses everything, who's your four?
That's good. I'm going to put my boy Nick in there. I think he's going to be my strategic. Actually,
Physical. Nick should have been the physical choice.
yeah. It's good. I think Dave's going to be my physical. Actually, no, Dave's going to be my all-rounder, I think.
Told you.
I think Dave's going to be my all-rounder because I think he's got the physicality. He tweaked his game to get on with people, and he knew where the votes were. So I think Dave's going to fall into that role. Nick's my strategic. What have I got left? Social. Look, do you have to say Shawnee? Does everyone have to say Shawnee for social? Probably.
Yeah, I think so.
She's someone that I don't think can ever win. But she does seem to always get on with enough people to get through there. And then my physical powerhouse. That's a good one. Who's Emmett? Maybe. I feel like, yeah. I feel like I like Simon. Simon's obviously up there as well. No, Sean. Yeah, there's a few. I'll go Emmett. I'll go Emmett. I think it's interesting.
Plant-based Superman.
Plant-based Superman. There you go.
We're currently rewatching Brains versus Brawn for the podcast, so that was good timing.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Speaking of Superman, when we reviewed All-Stars, I compared it to the movie Hancock. So if you had to pick a movie to compare your season of Titans versus Rebels to, which would it be?
Oh, okay. That's good. Well, it is obviously, being a cinephile. This is something that I did a lot out there, and I was like, oh, this is like this. And ultimately, I think Titans versus Rebels, the film that comes to mind is Crazy Stupid Love. I feel like our season, there was crazy points. There were people doing moves that were not in their best interests. That was stupid. And some of these characters, you just fall in love with. So I think Crazy Stupid Love really, really encompasses our season. I think that gets my vote.
And plus Kevin Bacon was also on the season too, so it works out perfectly.
Exactly.
Michael, do you want another question? Otherwise, I'll ask my last one.
I said my last one was my last one.
Okay.
We'll let Jake wrap up.
Okay. Well, I'll just ask this one because I know somebody will be mad if we don't ask it. Us three met playing in Org, although we've never played against each other. But if we did, I would definitely beat both of them. But now that you've been on Survivor, would you ever play a online reality game?
Yes, definitely. I've played them before I got on Survivor. I've played them since I've been on Survivor. We played Brent Steele recently with Rob as a podcast people. I came second. I didn't win the final. But it was, I love doing that. I did actually, before I played, a couple of years before, we played like a local Melbourne Survivor over a long weekend.
Oh, wow.
Physically. That was so much fun. And that was like everyone was doing that, and everyone was big fans there. And even at that point, I was like, this is good training for when I actually get on. Like, this will be good. And I did learn a few like little things when I was out there that I'm like, okay, this could actually come in handy, or this is how I'm coming across at this point in the game. And I actually fell into the trap playing that, where I got really close with one person. Again, this is over 3 days, but I got really close with one person to the point of I was just like, oh, look, we were in a minority and we had an idol between us and we're like, let's just flip a coin and which one of us can use the idol. That'll be pretty fun. We'll do that. And he ended up voting for me. And so it wasn't a tie vote. And then we didn't get to use the idol. And at that point I was like, yeah, man, play your own game. Don't play for someone else. Don't play as a group. Don't play as a team. Don't play as a two. Play your own game. So when I was out there this time, I was thinking, yeah, look, don't be afraid to burn someone that you're close to or get rid of one of their allies and do that before they do it to you. And that was really clear in my head. But yeah, I love orgs. So if you've got some good orgs, team, give me a shout.
All right.
Well, it's funny you say that because we came from Survivor Vanquish, which runs orgs and they raise money for charity, give kids the world.
Love it.
So we can highly recommend that, and we can put you in touch with the right people if you want to hit them up.
Love it, team. So good.
Yeah. Well, to close this out, is there anything you want to promote, or if anybody wants to follow you on social media, where can they find you?
Oh yeah, great. So Eden, so Instagram, Eden Porter 1, on X, just Eden Porter. I also have a comedy troupe that I do with my brother called Game Boys Comedy. We're currently revving up we've got a Fringe Festival in Melbourne. We'll be doing a one night only comedy special. I'm hosting Survivor Trivia at a pub on the 23rd of this month. If you're in Melbourne, come down and check it out.
Okay.
I think that's and I've got another podcast called Cancelled Movie Report where basically me and my friend Cambo, we find the best scripts that Hollywood never made. We get professional voice actors and we recreate a bunch of scenes and we talk through the entire script to give you the most accurate representation of what that film would have been like. We've done things like the original Gladiator 2 script, which is very timely because there's a new Gladiator coming out now, the original Alien 3 script, Kevin Smith's Superman. We've done all these great films recreated. So if you've ever thought, hey, I wonder what that film would have been like, check it out. We've just finished recording our latest season that should be coming out in the next couple of weeks. That's at Cancelled Movie Report. We do some, I think this season we've got we've got an unmade Ghostbusters. We've got the unmade Plastic Man movie, and we've got the original Stanley Kubrick's Napoleon script where Jack Nicholson was going to play Napoleon, and it is wild.
That sounds wild. I can't even picture that one.
Yeah, it's really crazy. So a lot of fun. Check that out, Cancelled Movie Report. But guys, thank you so much. If any of your fans have any other questions, just send them to one of the group, your Tribal Nerds, and I'll jump on and answer any more that people have. But yeah, I just love talking about Survivor. Thank you so much for having me on. It's really great. Hopefully we'll do, once we get a new season of Survivor, if you want to chat the new season, just give me a buzz, team, and I'll be there.
Yeah, we definitely can have you on to talk a season of Survivor when one comes on again. But thank you so much, Eden. It was great having you, and getting to talk a bunch of super fans talking together is always a treat. So with that, we will end it here, and we will see you all next time on the Tribe of Nerds.